Namaskar. So yesterday, a friend of mine was asking me what's my opinion on raw vegan diet, and I'd like to give you my yogic perspective on this, looking at the effects not only on the body, also on the mind, spirit, and I want to take it even one step further than that. So let's just start out first with the physical effects on the body. I do think that a raw vegan diet can be very purifying and especially beneficial if you're trying to remove inflammation in the body, go through a type of detox. Eating only raw vegetables and fruits can be very cleansing. And from the yogic point of view, raw food is especially rich in prana. So prana is the vital force, the life energy. And prana, in its purest form, comes from sun rays. It's then converted by chlorophyll into usable sugars. And so the lower on the food chain that you go, when you're looking at leaves that are full of chlorophyll, they're going to have a lot of prana. And also the fruits and berries that come directly from this conversion of prana into sugars. So from that level, you're going to get a lot of vitality from raw food. However, from a more Ayurvedic perspective, this isn't an ideal diet for every body type. You really have to also understand what kind of body you have. Some people can tolerate a raw diet very well, and some people, it will aggravate their symptoms. So people who have a lot of vata, who have a lot of air, eating a raw food diet can make them less grounded. It can also lead to a kind of a bit of an extremist type of mindset. That's an exaggeration of vata energy from the Ayurvedic perspective. For kappas, it can be quite good. Kappas can tolerate it. They have strong digestion. And pittas to some extent. But for most people, as a regular diet, some level of cooked food is balancing, is warming. Especially depends on the time of year. A raw food diet in the middle of the summer will have a different effect on you than it will in the middle of the winter. In the middle of the winter, it might chill you. Whereas in the middle of the summer, that's a desirable effect because it's really hot out. That's why usually, naturally, we are attracted to eat things like salads and raw fruits in the summer. And in the winter, we want warming foods. We want baked foods. We want things that contain heat and help the body to stay warm. Agni, which is the fire of the body, the digestive fire of the body, if in a cool season, eating too many cooling foods, then the digestive power will go down, like a fire that's getting too much water put on it. So again, time, place, and person. I think that you have to be careful about just saying like, oh, this is the best diet for everyone all the time. Because people are different, seasons are different, and we need to be able to adjust according to time, place, and person. I believe that since I started doing yoga, I became so much more attuned to my body, more aware of what's going on inside of me and how different things influence that. And so as you're practicing yoga, you can become more sensitive to notice what foods are good for you personally and what foods are not good for you. Now, there's a second level to good for you and not good for you, because usually when we talk about food, we only think about nutrition and what's going to create a healthy body. But in yoga, we're looking at other factors and other dimensions of health. So we're also looking at what's the impact on the mind. And even deeper than that, how does that influence our spiritual practice? So like I said, yoga helps you to become much more attuned to your inner world and to what's happening inside, to the effect of different, both physical influences, but also different, mental influences on your well-being, but also on your spiritual practice. And foods that are pranic generally are helping. You're not going to get enlightened by your food. If it was that easy, many of us would be enlightened. But food can help to at least create a favorable environment, or it can actually be creating some, like you could say, like static noise, that you have to fight against to find that sattvic, pure, kind of peaceful state of being inside. So the vegetarian foods generally and vegan foods are really conducive towards having a calm, peaceful mind. And, there are yogis who eat very little. And what they do eat will tend to be fruits and roots and milk. This was the classic diet of the yogi, or at least the legendary classic diet of the yogi: fruits, roots, and milk. You will notice non-vegetarian foods, greasy foods, very, fried foods. They create a lot of acidity on the physical level, so they can tend to not be ideal for physical health either. But they also, when our digestion is heavy, then our mind is also heavy. It's harder to get clarity, even with good vegetarian food. But if it's too much food, or if it's too heavy, because it's deep fried or whatever, and too big of a quantity or too spicy, all of these things can agitate the mind. So from this point of view, a raw vegan diet should be good for your meditation also, as long as you can digest it well. Meaning, again, season, body type, etc. If it's, for some people, too much raw food, they might not be able, if the digestion is weak, they may not be able to get all the nutrition out of it. And so it might, on the physical level, lead to some nutritional deficiencies because the body's not absorbing everything. So on these levels, I would say, raw vegan diet could work well for somebody who's practicing yoga. But I want to bring in yet another level, which is it sustainable for everyone? This is a kind of bringing in the ethics of neo-humanism and thinking about not only what's good for me individually, but what's good for everyone, what's good for the planet. What if everybody was doing what I'm doing, would we have enough to go around? If you look at diets throughout history, most of the traditional diets of societies were based on a staple grain and legumes. And what's really interesting is, legumes and staple grains together, like rice and dal, or rice and beans, or wheat and beans, these types of combinations create a complete protein. They have all of the different amino acids to create a complete protein and to create satiety, to not feel hungry right away. If you just eat rice, you'll be hungry very quickly, even if you eat a big quantity of rice. So this kind of traditional diet of many cultures. Now, they would also have perhaps meat and of course also vegetables and other elements of the diet, but this would be kind of the core of the diet. It's cheap. And not only is it cheap, it's easily accessible. When you're cultivating grains and legumes, on the level of agriculture, the cereals take out nutrients from the earth, but the leguminous cultures are putting them back in. They're nitrogen fixers. So leguminous vegetables actually build soil. They're really kind of healing for the earth. So when you put these combinations together, it is something on an agricultural level that doesn't just deplete the resources of the earth, but actually helps to regenerate and create stability. So whereas if you have, let's say we're talking about raw vegan diet, if everybody is eating raw vegan diet, that's a diet that requires a lot of resources to sustain over a long period of time. To get enough calories, you have to eat a lot of things like nuts. And I guess you could sprout beans and still get some of the benefits of legumes. So if you're doing that, that would perhaps work. But like I said, it can be a bit harder to digest. The cooking helps on an Ayurvedic level to make the food more easy to assimilate into the body. So as long as you can get the nutrition out of it, that would be okay. But if you're eating a lot of tree nuts, for example, tree nuts require a lot more resource. They're a lot more expensive. And it would be harder to create enough tree nuts for everybody to have similar quantities of them. So it can be a kind of exclusive diet for those that have the money for it. And not only tree nuts, but like, I don't know, many of the other fruits and vegetables in many parts of the world. When I was living in India and I was just coming out of my training center, we had a very small little allowance that we'd been given to survive a month in Calcutta. And on that allowance, I didn't have enough money to buy fruits. Up until then, every time I was in India, I was enjoying so many fruits because for me as a Westerner, compared to the dollar, the fruits were so cheap. But now I was on a similar allowance to my Indian sisters and brothers, and you know, it just wasn't enough. Like I would eat it all in one day, or I could have tomatoes and cucumbers every day. So I had tomatoes and cucumbers, a lot of tomatoes and cucumbers. And that's when I realized, you know, fruits really, really are a luxury for countries that are developing, even in a tropical country like that, where it's relatively cheap, but it depends on your income level. And the vast majority of people cannot afford to have fruits every day. They have them a few times a month, you know, as a special treat. So, yeah, on the level of solidarity, equality, neo-humanist ethics, Jama and Yama kind of ethics, I think it's a bit exclusive to be able to be raw vegan. I think it's not something that would be sustainable if the whole planet went raw vegan. And I think our choices should be something that ideally everybody could do, and it would generate abundance for all. It would allow everybody to live in a healthy body. This is maybe, if you're watching this video, you're probably not a meat eater. You might be, but you know, if you've already made the choice towards vegetarianism and you're considering also veganism and like this, then you're probably aware that the meat industry is absorbing, you know, such a concentration of the resources of the planet, both in terms of water and grains. You know, when I was in the US once, I went on a trip by car across the country, and it was like days where all you see is cornfields. Days, multiple days, whole horizon from morning till evening, driving at, you know, 60 miles per hour, nothing but cornfields. And who eats so much corn? We don't eat a lot of corn in the US. That's all mostly dedicated to the food for animals. And if not, high fructose corn syrup, you know, replacement for sugar, for soft drinks and things like this. So it's creating a monocultural type of imbalance on the earth, creates more dependency on chemicals and petrol. You know, it's a very short-sighted type of way of using the earth's resources. Only thinking of here and now and profit, but not giving back to the earth and, you know, helping to sustain biodiversity and so forth. So for yogis, I think that we have the most peace of mind when our choices are not only good for us individually and for our bodies, but when we are also thinking with benevolence for the collective welfare. I do think that raw vegan diets are extremely useful tool for detoxes if you are sick. I had several friends that had cancer, and I'm friends with a very good Ayurvedic doctor, and he put them on raw juiced fasts. And within 10 days of that fast, I saw them go from being bedridden to being able to walk again, and even to going in remission. Now, that wasn't the only thing he did. You know, it was just one element of what he did. He gave them lots of herbal treatments and many other things. But I saw that the fasting on raw vegetable juices was very powerful. And when I've tried it myself, I've seen, you know, different types of symptoms just clear up. Even, you know, when I've had inflammation in my shoulder, I've seen it just, you know, evaporate within 10 days, like start to, all of that inflammation go away. So it's a very powerful tool for healing. It gives your system a rest if it's juices, you know, raw juices, because you don't have to, then you're surely going to digest the nutrition from it. It doesn't have the fiber and other things you need. This isn't a way to live your whole life. But for short periods, can be an extremely powerful tool to stimulate your immune system to help heal yourself. So I think there's many benefits of raw vegan for short-term healing purposes, you know, used in a conscious way. But for a long-term type of diet, I think that it's more compassionate to be sustainable and to be eating a nutritious, balanced vegetarian diet that uses also cooked cereals and different types of legumes, because these are nourishing the earth. I'm very interested in your own thoughts on this. I'm sure some of you are not going to agree with me, and that's okay. So I'm looking forward to your comments below the video and to continue this talk with you. Thank you. Namaskar.